Do you ever feel like you're trying to learn too much at once? Or that learning something new is like trying to drink from a fire hose? Like you're just taking on too much info at one time? Okay, so in order to circumvent that, my suggestion is focused practice or intentional practice. Now that sounds good, but what does that mean? Basically, you need to break things down into little digestible pieces. I will give you an idea of what that means. But first, let me establish how to go about doing this. Many years ago, I was in martial arts for a lot of years, and I had an instructor who taught me something that just stuck with me for life. It has helped me learn so many things. He used to refer to principles and techniques. Now, he would say principles are the core thing that you're doing, and techniques are built on principles. And it sounds at first, you're like, okay, that just sounds esoteric. I don't know what that means. It took me some time. It took me about a year or so, maybe 2 years before I really fully understood what he meant in terms of martial arts. But then it made it where it was like everything can be broken down like that. I'm like, this is kind of a cheat sheet for life, for learning. For instance, you have principles, which are kind of like basics, but it's kind of simpler than that, but also it's a little more nuanced and a bit more essential. Principles are like the core thing you're doing, okay? Like in the case of martial arts as the example, don't get punched in the face, right? Move out of the way. Sounds pretty obvious, but it is a principle. Don't get hit. If you're not, or as Mr. Miyagi said, no be there. Principles are sort of the base thing. Now you might think basics, but the problem is basics can be like simple techniques, but this is like the core thing you're doing, okay? Art, for instance, or drawing. Let's just focus on drawing. Drawing it can be thought of as making marks on a paper. Sure. Also, the absence of marks on the paper matter in your drawing as well. If you're talking about how you focus on shading something, that's more like the technique. Shading itself is more the principle. If you learn how to shade in general, you can learn to do different techniques of shading a little bit easier. Like if you understand what shading is, how to create gradients in different media, specifically in pencil, you might use a tortillon or like a little blender or a paper stump is what it really is. Or you can use your finger, right, and create gradients of softness from dark to light, and that creates shading. But what is shading really, though? What is the purpose of shading? It's to create depth, right? So, and to create texture and things like that. You can do a lot of things with shading, but ultimately it's about depth. How you shade is the technique portion, but shading itself is the principle. And this goes for color theory, all that kind of thing. How you apply paint to a canvas versus why you chose the color you chose. Because the color you choose usually is to try, let's just say you're trying to match a study, you're looking at a landscape or something. The principle there is to get the paint on the canvas to kind of convey a similar image, depending on what it is you're doing. In this case of a study, let's just say you want a painterly look. So you're just trying to get it close to what you're seeing. Technique would be how to apply your brush. The principle would be just putting the brush on the canvas. So those all sound simple, right? But all you need is a basic idea of how to do it. Now, when it comes to drawing, all you need is a simple mark on the page. You need to be able to literally be able to take your pencil or your pen or whatever you're using and make a mark on the page. That is the core idea of drawing. And when not to put a mark on a page, that negative space. Those two things combined, you only need marks to draw. You don't need shading technically. Shading is it is a principle, but you don't always have to use it. You don't need every principle, and you certainly don't need every technique. Certain principles apply to certain situations, and once you understand what those principles are, you can start creating your own techniques or borrowing other people's techniques. But the principle is the same. For every drawing artist, the idea is to put some sort of medium down and put some shapes on the paper to convince the viewer that they're looking at a picture. That is the principle. Once you understand the fundamentals of how something works and the difference between a technique and, say, the principle of the thing that you're doing, you can back down and sort of take a minimal approach to getting better at things. And you can compartmentalize. That's where focused practice comes in. You understand that all you need to do to draw is put marks on a paper. That's simple enough. Now, what are you doing with those marks to create whatever object you need? Now, this is where technique kind of starts to blend from principle. The point is, make marks on page. Cool. Straight lines. What about circles? That's a choice of whether or not you want to use shapes or not. But basically, making marks is a more generalized thing. It could be a circle, it could be a straight line, it could be a combination of the two. How you put the pencil marks down, that is technique. And yes, I think you can learn a lot from technique, but you should make sure you understand the core principle of what you're doing and make sure you really understand the fundamental of it so that you can work on your technique and get better. It's sort of like a house being built on quicksand. Doesn't matter what the house is made of, it's going to collapse. So make sure your foundation is good, then you can work on your technique. You can constantly monitor this stuff and get to where it's second nature, and you'll learn really, really fast. Focus practice is, let's say, now that we know we're just using drawing as an example, you got this little, I'm going to put a mark on a page. Okay, now what? Well, that mark can be a circle or it could be a line. Let's just pretend it's a curved line or a straight line. Let's just keep it simple. All right, well, with a curved line and straight line, I can make circles, I can make triangles, I can pretty much make every shape there is, right? Depending on the degree of the curve, sure, but I mean, that's the idea. It's more generalized. That's what principles are. So let's say, okay, well, I want to get good drawing, I don't know, people, human heads, right? Well, there are methods or techniques that you can follow. And if you follow a techniques are more refined. Methods are very similar to principles. So something like the Loomis method is a really great way to learn to draw the human head from memory, because it kind of compartmentalizes the whole human head. And it's easier to remember the generalized concept of how a head is to be constructed than to worry about exactly every detail of how a head should look. That way you can kind of sculpt things and get it close. With the Loomis method, even if you've never drawn before, you can do a pretty good job of getting the head close. That's sort of a principle technique thing. But the focus practice is to say, today, I'm going to work on the Loomis method. And that's it. 30 minutes, that's it. I'm going to work on just hands today. I'm going to work on just feet today. Or for the next week or the next month, whatever you want to do. Just also make sure you remind yourself the reason why you're doing it in the first place is probably because it's meant to be fun, right? You want to express something, maybe not always expressive. Maybe you want to draw comic books, or you want to draw your own cartoon or whatever. And you're like, I don't really have any idea of how to draw things the way I'd like to. And that's where focus practice comes in. Take the time to learn to draw your basic shapes. A lot of beginners will ask, why do I have to learn to draw basic shapes? What's the point? The point is that shapes are the principles of the basic building blocks of pretty much everything around you in terms of construction drawing. If you want to draw a human body, you can break it down into cylinders, boxes, cubes, whatever you want to think of it as, spheres. And then two-dimensionally, it's circles with shading, right? So you can have circles and squares, and all of that stuff is fundamentally what you're using to draw a body. Eventually, you can get away from construction drawing, but if you want to do a quick, and I'm telling you, Marvel artists do this, all right? People who get paid on the regular to draw characters from memory, they use construction and center point lines, things like that, like line of action, things like that, to be able to draw their characters quickly. And they get paid on speed, so they have to get things done quickly. And a lot of people are like, drawing's not a competition for speed. Like, it's not a speed competition. I agree. However, if you are trying to be, let's just pretend that your goal is to be a comic artist that gets paid to do pages. You have to get good at drawing. You also get good at drawing quickly, and then your gestures need to be done fast. Well, speed comes with practice, and if you just, like everybody always says, to get better at drawing, just practice every day. That's generic advice, and while that's true, that's just sort of like the blanketed statement. The truth of it is you need to be focusing your practice. Drawing every day is only going to do you as good as the thing you're drawing every day. If you just keep drawing a flower every day, you're only going to be good at drawing that flower. Now, I will say you might get exceptionally solid at that one flower, but it's been proven in studies that people who differentiate the things that they're trying to study learn to draw and paint much better than those who try to master one specific reference and draw the same thing over and again. Now, I will say iterative drawing is good to get better at that one thing. So when you are practicing, and it sounds kind of contradictory, but there's a point to this. If you're drawing hands a bunch, you're going to get better at hands, but then change it up to something else. If you want to learn to draw flowers, and just keep drawing them until you feel pretty confident or you're bored and move on to something else. But also balance your focus practice with having fun. Draw a goofy character, which is why I do these characters and these podcasts. I draw these characters for myself to make myself laugh and to be silly. I'm not worried about correctness. I'm not worried about how great it looks. I'm just letting myself make marks on a page and have fun. And I hope you do the same. Give yourself time to focus your practice. Focus on hands, focus on feet, focus on whatever it is you want to focus on. Whatever you think you need to get better at, whatever could concept art or animation principles or whatever the thing is that you want to do. Take the time to focus on that stuff, but give yourself equal amounts of time of just have fun. It also takes time, right? There's something called long-term potentiation. You need to give yourself time to process. It takes a couple of days for your brain to move something from short-term to permanent. So don't expect that you're going to do it today and be perfect at it. It's going to take time. Just give yourself time to get good. Just learn to accept that you're not, for one thing, you're not perfect. And two, it's going to be a long journey, but enjoy the process. Get lost in drawing and focus practice, but have some fun. So it should be equal parts. Learn the thing that you think you need to get better at and draw for the sake of drawing. I think that's about all I can think to say about that. And hopefully this is useful to somebody out there. With that, I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for hanging out. Peace.